これよりパネルディスカッションを行ってまいりたいと思います。本日のパネルディスカッションですが、NTA、NTTA 利活用における課題と可能性についてと題しましてご登壇いただいております7名の先生方にディスカッションをしていただきたいと思います。それではまずはじめにパネリストの先生方改めてご紹介をさせていただきます。So first I'd like to introduce all panelists. まずはハワイ大学マノア校経済学部名誉教授アンドリュー・メイソン先生です。Professor Andrew Mason。続いて国際連合経済社会局人口統計部人口問題担当官ムーンシム・ライ様です。Dr. ムーンシム・ライ。続いて国際連合人口基金アジア太平洋地域事務所人口と開発に関する地域技術専門官ワッサーナ・イムエム様です。Dr. ワッサーナ・イムエム。続いて大王国国家経済社会開発庁社会データ指標開発課課長スパンナダ・ローハチャイ様 Dr. スパンナダ・ローハチャイ。ハワイ大学マノア校経済学部教授サンヒョップ・リー先生 Professor サンヒョップ・リー。日本大学人口研究所次長および日本大学経済学部教授松倉力也先生。そしてカリフォルニア大学バークレー校経済学と高齢化の人口学センター学術専門職グレッチェン・ドーリホア様 Dr. グレッチェン・ドーリホア。以上7名の皆様にディスカッションしていただきます。そしてモデレーターは国立社会保障人口問題研究所企画部室長福田節也が務めます。では福田室長よろしくお願いいたします。
はい、ありがとうございます。ここからのディスカッションは英語で行いたいと思いますので、必要な方は同時通訳機をつけてください。So we're gonna have a discussion in English, so don't worry about the Japanese. So I'd like to organize this panel session in a way that I'm gonna ask one or two questions to each presenter, and then so you each have like 5 minutes to answer your question, or it could be shorter, of course. But then once I get all the answers from you, I'd like to have kind of free discussion about how we could develop NTA in the future, or what would be the additional challenges that we haven't really discussed in this seminar. Or you can also comment on or advise on how Japan could best use of the NTA and the NTTA data, because we just have published new data this year and haven't much had an experience of using it, especially in the policy area. So those comments or discussions are very much welcome in this session. So I'd like to start my question in this order, or would you like to have the other way around? Yeah, maybe better from this order. So because it already took some time since Andy spoke to the audience. So Andy, I have a question about how NTA treat asset income. That is a similar question that our Director General made. So in my knowledge, in NTA, the asset income, especially the private asset income, is a combination of asset income owned by corporate and also asset income owned by household. So sometimes, in my view, it is quite misleading that if we see half of the old age life cycle deficit is made up by private asset income, but actually some of them are not really owned by household, but it's rather owned by corporates. So I'm sure that you are developing NTA, so that point was discussed in the past. So what was the discussion you made when you were developing the NTA framework, and how would you treat, or how we could interpret the meaning of asset income in terms of age reallocations? That is my question. Yeah, maybe it's better to get answer from each by each. Yeah, so could you answer this question? Thank you.
So, asset income, well, if I think about myself, what asset income do I have? Well, I have the income from my pension. I have a pension plan, and there are, and there are stocks in that pension plan, and they pay interest, and they pay dividends, and so forth, and that is measured directly. So that's private income, but it's directly measured to me. If I took the household survey that we use, and they asked me, I would report that as part of my income. Another more complicated issue is the income that arises from owner-occupied housing, in which, so that's the value of my home, and I reside there. And so we try to get an estimate of the rental cost. So suppose I had to rent the home that I lived in, how much would I have to pay for that? And we would count that as asset income. And that's also, at least in the United States and many other countries, that's readily can be obtained in Japan as well. The Statistics Bureau estimates that for individuals. And so we can get that. That's not the case in every country. I think in Korea it's more difficult to deal with the value of owner-occupied housing. So there are difficulties in measuring these things, but the one that's most difficult is the one that you refer to, and that's that there are many corporations that do not distribute their earnings. They retain their earnings. And so that's not recorded anywhere. That would not be counted as income for me in any survey that has ever been conducted. And so the question is, well, what do we do about that? Because our thinking and what influenced us was the fact that, well, I own that corporation because I own shares in that corporation, and I may not receive any of the earning from that year, but the value of their shares should go up. And so I could have appreciation in the value of the stock that would accrue to me. And well, that doesn't show up in an income survey, I don't think, but we would like to include that. Or another way to think about it is, well, maybe the shares didn't appreciate, but eventually the corporation retained their earnings today, but they'll give them back to me maybe next year. And so, and there's, in present value terms, then there's some flow to me in my resources. And so this is called piercing the corporate veil. So we say, well, those corporations may keep it, but it's really ours, and we know it, and we act on that. So other people would say, well, that's ridiculous. And people have said that to me before. So people who, I think, a lot of people in the system of national accounts, they do not do this. And of course, in the system of national accounts, the individual plays no role at all. There is no individuals in the SNA. There are firms, but there aren't people. And so that's why one reason we take a different approach. So I find this easier to accept in a country like the United States, but when I start thinking about China, I get really troubled. I don't know what to think about China because they have all these state-owned enterprises and they're earning all these profits, I guess, and they're keeping them. And do people think that they own those state-owned? I don't think so. And so, so when you do NTA for China, you have these huge saving rates and low consumption. And it's a very peculiar case that I don't think NTA fits very well. And so, well, it's a troubling question. And I'm sorry you asked me about it. But that's the best I can say.
Yeah, so maybe Japanese team should have to do something with it. Okay, so I moved on to Nicole. So I have a question about NIA. I think it's a really catchy new trend in development of NTA framework. But at the same time, I know how difficult and time and labor consuming constructing NTA is. And we are a team of 3 in Japan to construct NTA. We're really exhausted. And then now, if you say like you disaggregate NTA by SES, socioeconomic statuses, I think it's a lot of work. I'd like to know a little bit about like what are the particular difficulties in constructing NIA in your point of view, and then also I think like disaggregating every NTA variables by socioeconomic status is really challenging. Is there any country which you can really do that, or most of the NIA is only like only for the partial variables in NTA rather than full accounts? So that is my question.
Thank you for the question. Well, I didn't mean to give you more work. So why do we have NIA to begin with? Actually, this is more like a demand-driven. So we have countries like Jamaica. The government wanted the NTA desegregated by income quintiles. So they wanted it. And then we have some Latin American countries say the same thing. So that's why it's more like an idea that given by member state, and we incorporated their suggestions in this project. You are right on. It's impossible. I mean, a lot of start with measurements. Which measurements we use? There's so many measurements that we can disaggregate, right? You can do it by income quintile, but that is a drawback on it because individuals' income changes over their life cycle. So it's not stable to represent someone's status the whole life cycle. Then a more stable measure would be the education approach, looking at education attainment. But then education attainment, usually we only have data for education attainment of the household head, for example. Then it doesn't really represent well individual differences in the household. So the manual itself, we come out with a recommendation of using education quintile. We also chose one more measurement in the manual, which is household arrangement. It is the most difficult one to measure. So you have different types of household, nuclear household or extended household. Then you can see differences of the transfer and how they support the older person. So measurement is the technical difficulty, but the thing is, we don't have to measure the whole full account. It depends on the country demand. So technical difficulty we can handle by having expert and come up with manual and training. To me, the most difficult part is sustainability. Whether the country could sustain, you train the person will continue be in the institute to estimate again for the next year. So that is the more issue to me for sustainability. Yes, those would be the more challenging for me to identify which partners to work with in the government itself to make it sustainable. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So I will be careful with not being burned out. So I have now moved on to Wasana. So you have a lot of experiences of communicating with policymakers, especially like high-level policymakers. Usually, like a statistics institute or government research institute like us, it is quite difficult to reach out to the high-level government officials to talk about NTA. But if it was possible for us to communicate with policymakers, what is the really important key to communicate with policymakers? Like from your experience, if you can share some of the good practice, I'd like to really hear about it.
Thank you. That's a very good question and important. My role, I work as a technical person supporting 22 country offices that we operate. So I do not have direct access to discuss with policy planners, but I support our representative or technical people in countries of these 22 countries to speak to policy planners. And first, I would like to put context why policy planners pay attention to this subject. We are talking about countries in this region which is, they are aging fast. And we are not like a country like OECD countries. We are talking about middle-income countries or even low-income country in which they are facing this concern. And oftentimes we got the response, if you're talking about this, forgot translation, speak slower. Like 10 years, 15 years ago, the focus is gonna be about older person. But today, attention that we have addressed by the government quite a lot is on low fertility. And oftentimes they really have policy to raise fertility that I mentioned before. They said that they don't want lesson learned from countries, Japan, Korea, and others. They would like to raise fertility, ask women to have more babies. And with that, I think NTA provides a very crucial evidence because we are talking about life cycle approach policy attention. Yeah, and that's important that we need to use the NTA evidence to address public and private transfer of the cost that the family have to really burden. We have seen good example from Thailand, for instance, that at a preschool age, the burden is on family, not the public do not really give adequate transfer for a family who wish to have babies. And also we would like to really highlight that desired fertility is still there. Some women, some couples, they still would like to have family, have children. But how can we ensure that you really provide an easier pathway for them to make decisions? For instance, we know that educated people have postponed their age at marriage and age at conception. In some countries, we have seen that ART, assisted reproductive technology, or IVF, have been included as part of the universal health package, for instance. Yeah? So I think we need to really alert the government to really see attention, the importance of having adequate investment to create human capital development for new generation. Talking about health and education investment, education that makes sure that we are talking about education that can lead to employment. Because today we have seen mismatch of graduates that they produce, and they cannot find job out there. So I think this is going to be important to focus on application of NTA throughout the life course, not segmental by age, but interconnected, supported, and role of state and also of family. I would like to say that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now I'd like to move on to PAR. So I have 2 questions for you. One is, I think both of them are quite easy ones, so you don't have to be scared. So the first one is, I'd like to know like how NTA producing team is organized in Thailand. As I said, like we have only 3 people working on NTA, and then it was a lot of work. And in Thailand, like, how many people are working on producing NTA, and how often you publish data? That is question number 1. And then the second question was a little more complicated, maybe. So you mentioned that NTA is used for several policy making. And then one of the examples was like, it was used for the evidence for the child support grant. So I'd like to know a little bit more detail about how NTA was used in this policy making process. So these are 2 questions from me. Thank you.
Thank you. For the first question, right now we have about 4 people producing the NTA, but the NTA team, there are 7. The remaining 3 are the ones doing, more of the analysis and on the uses of NTA. Basically the other 2, I kind of count myself into one, but I'm kind of oversee the whole thing. So the other 2 are the one. It's kind of, I'm jumping to the next question, but the other 2 are doing the application for policy making, basically. How often do we do the NTA? We used to do it every other year. That's the most often times that we can do, because the household surveys only do the income survey every other year. So we used to do that that often. But right now we are trying to do it in a less often manner. We kind of trying to do it every 4 years instead. So that would leave us 3 years to do more on the use or the utilization of the NTA. We want to do more, like Sanyop mentioned, there's a lot of people want to use them, but not to produce them, right? So that's, you can count us as one of them. And so as both producers, and we also want to be end users, so we also want to have time to use the data that we produce. And coming to the second question, for the child support grants, we use public expenditure and compare them between children aged 0 to 6 and compare that to children aged like 7 to 14 and 15 to 24 or something. And the data at that time showed that government expenditures on children aged 0 to 6 is really low compared to school-age children. And so that sort of shows that there's a policy gap that government can do something about it, to invest on it. And together with the, return on education figures, we all know that, return on investment, on education investment for children at a very young age gives the highest returns. And so together with that, it sort of supports a government policy to implement the child support grants. And
Thank you very much. So I came up with one additional question. Do you intend to compile NTTA as well, or only stick to NTA?
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah, I just actually had a discussion with Gretchen earlier that the NTTA seems to be sort of a really difficult, hard to do sort of concept, similar to you with the disaggregation by income quintiles thing. Once you finish compiling the NTA, you just want to focus on the NTA first and not the modification or the extension or whatever. And so at the beginning, we were thinking that, oh, maybe we'll focus on the NTA, but not the NTTA. But now, especially after COVID, there seems to be a lot more evidence in Thailand that you know, like care work within the households really make a big difference, and especially you can see that very obviously during the COVID, and probably right now as well. So that's sort of brings us to the attention of the NTTA. So we plan to do that, but hopefully we can we can do that in the future. Yeah. Thank you.
It's good to know that Thailand will also compile NTTA, maybe in the future. But I will tell you that compiling NTTA is much easier than compiling NTA. So, and useful too. Okay, so now move on to Sanhyop, Professor Lee. Yes, so, yeah, you made a great presentation about how NTA network was expanded. And then you also mentioned that you pushed the Korean Statistics Office to compile institutionalized NTA. Is there any example? You just showed us the NTA report from the, is that from COSTAT or different government agency? Yeah.
You mean the example from the government budget office?
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, it's just by accident. So there are so many examples like that. So I had to present to one of the research institutes in Korea. And one of the participants was the author of the report. And so there is no way that actually I can find out who are using it. So it's like, sometimes I think it's unfair that when people use national accounts, they don't cite.
But very silently.
Yeah, they don't cite that this is a citation of national accounts. But when they say it's an NTA, then you have to cite. I think that's kind of weird. That's why I said, okay, actually the person who wrote that report knew my name, but she didn't know my face. Oh. So,
okay.
I mean,
so I think one of the important motivation to institutionalize NTA is to use it for the policy making, right? So do you think, how do you evaluate like a Korean situation? Like, do they produce very intensively, like every year, NTA data?
That's,
and then
really
do you see like they are really used in policy making, or what is the link between?
Right, that's a really good question, actually. I mean, I don't know why actually it ended up with making it every year, actually. So yeah, I mean, we suggest something like every 2 years in the beginning, every 3 years. So actually, I don't know why they ended up with actually making every year, but there is an advantage or disadvantage, because sometimes NTA actually fluctuate in some profiles, right? Think about in national accounts, there are one number, like compensation of employees. We have 90 numbers for compensation of employees, labor income. So think about the fluctuation we can think of. So if you compare like every 4 years, suppose the 4 years belong to pandemic. then you cannot explain why it happens, right? So it could be just random error, noise. But if we have every year, then we can actually find out why it happens and compare like a before and after, right? And also we can have some treatment and control group. So there are some advantages of having every year, but of course it's costly. And another thing is actually NTTA. We'll have a meeting in December 16, I believe that's Monday. So actually Korea is also trying to make the NTTA as a national
They did already.
No, it's not national official statistics yet.
I see.
So we tried for like 1.5 years, but probably next year we'll make it a national statistics.
So do you know any kind of linkage between the NTA and the policy making in South Korea?
Okay. So the example I showed actually show that whether actually it's really used for policy making. It's the same question, right? So, but the National Budget Office is using it for their fiscal projections. So I think that's probably the best example I can say, which I found out by accident. So, but that's the one example. But another example is actually I present a lot. I mean, I meet people a lot, right? So it's like just by conversation, and we have this kind of data. And sometimes we are very surprised to see this kind of figures of NTA here and there. So which are not cited, of course, not. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, those are the examples. Yeah.
By talking to policy people, you kind of enforcing policy making in South
Right,
Korea.
but one thing actually you should be careful about is policymakers do not have much time. They already, I mean, so you have to prepare like 1-minute version, like elevator pitch version, 20-minute version. So that whenever you meet people, they are not interested in NTA. They are not interested in actually sometimes anything. So, as I mentioned, is explaining NTA actually takes time. So if you just have some like, touch their point, what you need actually. And they like in India, what you need, I asked what you need instead of explaining NTA. And they're like planning something, so I gave some hints about NTA. So that kind of a thing.
I see. I think that's a great advice. So now let's move on to Professor Matsukura. Thank you very much for very lively, entertaining presentation about the situation in Japan by using NTA. I really enjoyed it. And then I found it really useful examples of how we understand what is really going on in Japanese society. So the question I have for you is rather a little methodological. So you show us some of the projection result, and then is that you just fix per capita profile of all NTA variables and just change the population structure, or you have made some more things?
I'm used to the golden rule. That's fixed age profile and change the population projection. That's the idea. That's the only way to, we can do that now. So yeah, we want to change to the age profile for future. There was this Professor Ichikawa there, but to change to the age profile, maybe we need some more data about like a micro data analysis, micro data based on how change to the people's behavior changed by the policy or some, I don't know, change of the value or something. So we cannot capture that yet. So if we can capture this kind of how change to the age profile in future, maybe we can do a more actual projection, but still work in progress.
So to have a different age profiles for the future period, is it something more relating to like macro simulation, setting some scenarios?
Yeah, that was scenario, but if you're using the longitudinal data, sometimes the longitudinal data during the survey, that's maybe policy change. We can, what kind of people change to the behavior? What kind of people don't change that? We can estimate, right?
Micro simulation.
Yeah, so that kind of simulation that you can use. I think so, but maybe Professor Ichimura has more idea. But
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the IPSS has just released the data, but we haven't had any experience of really using it. So I really want to keep collaborating with you and learn a lot from you. So now let's move on to the Dr. Doneher. So you showed us very comprehensive pictures of how NTTA lessons could be understood and interpreted. And then thank you very much, I really enjoyed it. So something that was really catched my eyes was like one of the graphs you showed that in Germany and Italy, the wage, total wage for unpaid care work was more than labor income. So I was kind of wondering how it could be happened. So is that because care work wages are higher than average wages? Could you explain a little bit more about the things behind?
The wage imputation part of the methodology is the most problematic. So I can change slightly the wages that I choose and have the estimate go up 20%, down 30%. So it's very sensitive to how you choose those wages. So the reason that for Germany and Italy, as I mentioned, that those wages are very high because there's a very high legal minimum wage. And there is a ton of time spent on unpaid care work, way more than on market work. So whether you think that the value of it, the monetary value, is sort of more than the entire labor income of the economy, that is a little concerning. But that's why, as much as possible, I like to stick to the time-valued estimates because they don't have this problem. Your hour is the same as my hour. We all have the same hour, but whereas country to country, we have very different wages. But I think that the point of that exercise was just to compare the volume of the production and show that it was quite large.
Thank you very much. And I have another question. So you mentioned that the unpaid work shared a substantial amount of, especially women's time use. So if government want to, for example, increase the female labor force participation, you have to also consider their time spent on unpaid work. So if you advise government to, for example, like increase female labor force participation, what kind of policy you can suggest to reduce unpaid work at home? Yeah, that is my question.
So there's one example in Costa Rica. This is a very concrete example that when they were talking about trying to increase female labor force participation as a way to deal with future aging, the researcher who was doing those estimates also prepared an estimate of the number of full-time child care workers you would need to provide to sort of induce that level of increase in female labor force, market labor force participation. So sort of assuming, kind of doing a sort of a micro-analysis of turning someone from a home production worker to an unpaid care worker to a market worker, how much change is that going to mean in household volume of unpaid care work, and how many additional child care workers would the government need to provide? They already have a national system of creche child care centers, but they would need to enlarge them. And so that part of the analysis is one strength of NTA and NTTA is that we can help provide a magnitude, an estimate of what is the size of response that I might have to induce some change that I want. So that's one way in which you could use that. But on a completely different question, just about the sort of research to policy, I can't remember who I heard this from, but someone said that researchers, we set the table for the policy discussion, but we don't get to have the food fight. I don't know if food fight translates in Japan, but and an example of this was when we had a conference in Paris in 2023, one of the French NTA persons was very involved in the discussions about changing the pension system there. Maybe you remember there were demonstrations in the street. They were going on when we were there, and with a person who was talking to Emmanuel Macron about solving this problem. So I'm very glad they didn't know out there in the street what we were doing in that building, because I wouldn't want to walk through the protest. But so their NTA was able to set the table of this is the magnitude of the challenge, but the people in the street were having the food fight. And so, you know, we can try to be a resource for policymakers, but in terms of, can I say that we changed the pension program in France? No, I cannot. So I just wanted to add that anecdote.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if I keep asking you, but I'm a bit curious, like, about what do you think about Ricky, Professor Matsukura, and my collaborative work about how AI or robotics would automate future unpaid work. Since you are like expert of unpaid work, so I'm just kind of curious. What do you think? Like, what would be the future prospect about it? That might be a solution. So I mean,
basically I don't know. Maybe you know that. There's a collaboration work. So yeah, this is it's assumption, right? That's but yeah.
Yeah. So like I. Asking Gretchen now, what do you think about it?
So I think that it's another wonderful example of being able to set the magnitude of sort of how much potential is there to solve this problem or to regain balance through this change. So all kinds of changes. I mean, the future of population aging is either to consume less or find more resources. So, you know, we reduce gender gaps, we extend working lives, or we find robotic workers. That one, certainly, if I can only choose those three, I like that one the best.
Okay, thank you. So let's hope that would happen in the future. So I think we just went through all the questions to everyone. So now I'd like to shift to the maybe free discussion about what would be the future of NTA and NTTA. What kind of new implementation you can think about to make it even better. So if you have any opinions about that, I'd like to ask you to raise your hands. Okay. Andy, please.
Well, let me talk about the future of NTA in Japan. Because I've been thinking about that and about the fact that you've embarked on this big project now to estimate NTA for 35 years. And we've presented a lot of different kinds of options like national inclusive accounts and time accounts and so forth. And I think one of the things that really helped the development of NTA is we did not focus solely on constructing data. There was a tremendous effort on it and interest in analysis. And so even when we just had a few countries we were still generating research and getting it out there. And that was essential, I think, to appealing to different constituencies in building NTA. And I think the same thing is true in a country. So if you just build accounts in Japan, nobody's going to come to the table. You know, it's too boring. You have to take those data and do some really interesting analysis. You have the great situation that everybody is thinking about aging. And you have a lot to say about that. And so I really hope that that's what you think about for your future, is taking your data and applying it to the issues in Japan.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other opinions or? Yeah, Gretchen, please.
I think the future looks bright because aging is all but assured. That, as you demonstrated, even if the very unlikely occurrence of higher fertility happens right away, happens very quickly, faster than anyone thinks it will, we are still generations away from sort of having a balance like we had 20 years ago. So adaptation is the name of the game, and it's the only path forward. So I think the more that we can help model adaptation, the more useful we will be to policymakers and researchers. And the more people will be interested in what we do.
Thank you very much. Wasana? Oh, sorry.
From UNFPA, way forward for us on NTA, we think that it's important to really create space for a closer South-South cooperation and not South-South cooperation, really, rather than focusing at capacity development in one country, advocacy in one country. I think that when you bring people together, like a planning ministry from one country to exchange with another country, or producer to discuss together, they feel that they are not alone in that pathway. So that's something that we plan to create more from, not even to bring people in a gathering like this, in which from UNFPA we may not have a lot of resources to do that. But I think when people really manage to form their team, we can really have regular meeting and catch up with them, even online. Even the discussion that we have today, I really have learned a lot. And I think we have rich materials, and if we can further digest and put into something simple, for instance, talking about policy applications throughout the life course, linked to materials and evidence that different presenters present, that can be very useful. For instance, we have a big forum coming up in March. That can be a very good exchange, really, before people stay together for 4 days and then go back to their countries and get busy with their work. So that's something I think there are some good opportunity on strengthening South-South cooperation and exchange between countries.
Well, thank you very much for the suggestion. I think we can discuss about it in the reception dinner after this seminar. Yeah, so Professor Lee, please.
I just want to echo what Andy said. You know, I have observed the last 20 years, right? So, and so many countries have constructed it. There were hurdles of constructing, but we need more actually research. There are a lot of potential of NTA, but so far, people just wanted to construct, but they want to fast track. So in the past, it took us initially it took us like years, and then months, and now people ask whether I can construct in 5 days, something like that. So I think whenever I observe that one, Andy and I mean everybody here are actually kind of in academia. In academia, we don't actually study to provide policy implication. Usually it's the opposite. When we conduct a lot of, when we investigate some topics and do research, sometimes that ends up with actually many important policy implications. So I think, there should be stressed some more construction of data and also research instead of just doing some fast track, this is needed for policy. I think we have to think about that. But anyway, I agree with Gretchen. The future is bright because I see a lot of potential in using NTA data sets.
Thank you. So now I'd like to move on to some questions from the floor. So there was a question about the data of NTA. So there should be some cases that we don't have enough or accurate data for some variables of NTA. And in that case, we can either estimate those profiles or in some cases the policy-making agency have data, but it's not statistics, so they don't provide the data unless we could have some good deal. So is there any cases, for example, in Thailand or Japan or in any other country that you could success to get some hidden kind of data source from the policy-making agencies, or do you ever kind of conducting some effort to acquire those necessary but not easy to access data? Maybe Paul? Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I don't have much experiences, so maybe
So
people on this stage can help me with that, maybe later. But from my experience, I think, well, as I said, the reason that the NESDC got this job of doing the NTA is because we are the owner of the data. So maybe what has done in the past maybe was that if you don't own the data, but for the case of Thailand, if you don't own the data, but you want the data from the government agencies, you do like you bring them in as a co-author or to bring them in as part of the project. And in that way, if they see the importance or the usefulness of the data that the NTA would provide, they would jump right in and they would definitely provide the data for the project.
Yeah, so I wish that would happen to Japan too, but I may be a little optimistic, but like by having conference like this and some, we know that some policymakers attended to this symposium, and then if they contacted us, then we can start talking about maybe getting some administrative data from them. So if once we get it, we can refine our NTA so that NTA could be more powerful for policy use, so that it's also good for them. So I'd like to establish that kind of a relationship with the policymakers. We'll see what will happen in the future. So the next question is about, so Japanese NTA data, so maybe that is more to the question to me. So the question is if there is a NTA by income level in Japan. I'm sorry, but we didn't get that level yet. So maybe that will be our next step. So yeah, we still have a kind of 5 minutes or so. So yeah, we can keep talking about things. So I don't know, maybe we have pretty much discussed a lot, but some of the challenges in the NTA is institutionalizations. Then this is maybe a question to Wasana, but so for example, how so could you explain what kind of institutionalization was possible for NTA?
I think that's a good question, and I think it's important. After many years that we work and support country on NTA work, what we have tried to do is to have national ownership on NTA producing. And before any kind of capacity development, we usually discuss quite closely between regional office and country office who really work on NTA. And we try to explore the interests of line ministry and also those who are producer of national account. Trying not to really only engage academia or professor. They can be like the mentor or coach. But we would like to really make sure that you are engaging data producer who have data, who can really produce NT. For instance, I can mention this good practice in Vietnam. In Vietnam, we first provided online training based on the request of the team there. In fact, there was a professor who really worked on NTA, but then they said we got a request from UNFPA country office in Vietnam saying that they want to have some kind of capacity development with people from line ministry that they managed to get their attention. And like what I said, we are kind of poor. We didn't have a lot of budget. And we managed to have online training, thanks to Song Yeop for helping us with that. And after that first meeting that you managed to really produce and they calculate life cycle deficit, but not on asset reallocation. And then manage and present that to the audience. And people got very excited about this data that their team produced that data themselves. And from that first advocacy December last year, I think, they really pay attention and NSO has been assigned to work on this. And UNFPA country office managed to work closely with them. I went to Vietnam together with Dr. Hayashi to Vietnam about 2-3 months ago in September. And I went to meet with NSO, and they said that they have assigned their statistician from 2 offices, one on national account, another one on population statistics to work together. And they said they would like to see the latest update of NTA that can be used next year to support their national development plan. So you have really leadership from the top and assign time for staff. Like I work closely with Pearl, with Dr. Supanada, she mentioned a few times. It takes time and energy. And you don't have full-time staff who work on NTA analysis. It means that you need to get buy-in from the top, making sure that the staff who work on NTA really can have adequate time to work on it. Because a few country offices, we found that they managed to form the team, but over time, team members have changed. Like in Malaysia as well, that NSO, they work on it. 10 years passed by, they have reassigned to other work. So I think we need to really discuss from the top and have ownership, and then that trickle down to a lower level and link that to policy planning. So that's how the process that we have done in country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all. I think we could learn a lot about the possibility and the future and challenges of NTA. And then it's about the time to end this panel discussion. And then thank you very much. And I'd like to move on to the closing remark by Professor Ogawa.
Let's give a big round of applause to all the panelists. Thank you very much.